Good afternoon, everybody. I am back again today to go over my first project for my game design class. For my project, I decided to go through and to try originally to sketch out, model, rig, and animate a 3D character and take it into Unreal Engine to actually make a playable character controller with the animations and get it working. Due to personal limitations and time constraints, I couldn't get the sketches done, nor was I able to 3D model a character myself. I ended up purchasing a base model to use with my project. I know it feels like it's a little bit of cheating, but it was my choice to save the time trying to create a model from scratch and create a character from scratch, and instead try to focus on making sure I have a very solid rig that animates well with some of the Mixamo animations that are downloadable and works well in Unreal Engine. That for the process of getting the model, I went to a website, I think free3d.com, and purchased the Chibi base model that was like $5. Then I took that, downloaded the FBX, imported it into Blender, and began working on modifying the mesh just slightly to add clothing to it. I selected all the vertices on the chest and extruded them on normals to create the shirt, which I then repeated the process for pants and shoes as well. The next thing I did was go through and create seams on the model along the polygons of the mesh, so that way I could UV unwrap the mesh in a clean style to make texturing easier. Once I went through the seams, which ended up being on the shirt, pants, shoes, arms, head, and legs, pretty much the entire body. There is seams. Once I had gone through and did that, I unwrapped the UVs. I then generated a subset of colors for skin tone and clothing on coolers.io, or .co, not .io. And from there, I created several materials with those colors for the skin, pants, shirt, and shoes. And then assigned the colors, obviously, once I created the materials. I assigned each color to a specific part of the mesh, so like the skin color would go on the head, hands, and I think that was pretty much it for that. My shirt texture obviously went on the shirt, pants for the pants, and shoes for the shoes, obviously. Now, I then created a blank texture and baked all those textures, or all the materials, into that texture. I then deleted all of the textures or not textures, but all the materials, and created one new material and placed the texture into the material to make it easier for the game engine to run at the end. Next, I went into the preferences of Blender and enabled the Rigify mod or plugin that is used to basically have a humanoid model rig bone structure that I can align to the mesh. I went through and enabled the x-axis mirroring, which will allow you to mirror the bones on both sides of the x-axis, so that way you don't have to go through and try to line everything up perfectly. I think the issues that I had ran into at some point rigging was because I was trying to modify each side independently when both sides needed to match up. That may have caused some delays in getting the project done on time, but overall, whenever I found out that issue, that may have fixed the bug that I was encountering in rigging. Next, I deleted all the extra bones that I didn't need. There's a ton of face bones that I didn't need. There were a couple of fingers I didn't need either. I think breast bones as well I did not need, and I deleted those. Once I went through and finished deleting all those bones, I went to the object mode from the edit mode that I was in, and selected the mesh, and then I shift selected the armature. I then right clicked on it, went to parent, and then I parented the armature with auto weights, which will allow you to actually deform the mesh into poses and be able to use the mesh as intended in the game engine. I did go through and check the rig to make sure that it can be posed and make sure the mesh would deform as necessary. And then I select the rig and all the contents underneath of it in the hierarchy that was parented, and go to export the FBX. Once the FBX was exported, which includes all textures, the skeleton, the mesh itself, and if I had any animations created in Blender, it would also go through and have those. I then opened up Unreal and imported those into Unreal Engine in a new project. And I started off with the third person blueprint project, just because it had a decent block out level to test already. And from there, I created from scratch a player character, which it's a blueprint that you create that will control the character's movements and inputs and such, and also has the camera attached to it, the mesh attached to it, and you can affect things such as jump height and run, sprinting, whatever. You can change a lot of things because this is like the actual character. I opened the project settings after that. Oh wait, no, I didn't. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, I'm going back. So once I created that character blueprint, that player character blueprint, I set up the mesh inside of the capsule that's defaulted, and then also set up the spring arm and the camera. Inside of you basically, to control where the camera is in relativity to the character, rather than adjusting the camera itself, you want to adjust the spring arm. I'm not 100% certain why that is. I'm guessing it's because the spring arm will keep it attached to the character as it moves, and that is probably the safest bet for that. Once I had finished setting that up, I actually ended up setting up a game mode that will, it's basically a blueprint that can control your actual mode and affects a lot of the things that can happen in the game itself and not necessarily with the character. And of course, whenever you enter a game mode, you want to select a default pawn for the player character to be. So I selected the default pawn to be the newly created player character. And then what I did after that was open the project settings to go to my maps and modes in the settings and set up the default game mode and map for the game to select when it starts up to be that new game mode I created, and then the default map that I was talking about that was a part of the third-person character project. Next, I went through and went to the input section of the project settings and created all of the inputs. The axis mappings for movement, left, right, up, down, looking around with your camera, or not really left, right, up, down, but like going left, right, forward, and backwards on the map. The setting up the movements in the inputs in the project settings does not make your character move at all. It just sets up the key bindings for controllers and keyboards to use to make the movements. Once you set up those, I went back into the player character and programmed in the movements of the players, which included, of course, the forward, backward, left, right. It also included jumping and it also included the looking around of the mouse. After that, after setting those up, I downloaded several animations off of Mixamo. It's an Adobe product that you can download free animations and be able to upload your character, and those animations will automatically adjust to your character's skeleton if it's a humanoid. I don't think it will fit if it's a quadrupedal animal or anything like that. There might be some animations on there for that, but most of it that I've seen has to do with bipedal humanoids. Now, once I downloaded those animations, I imported them into Unreal Engine just the same way I did import the FBX of the character that I was talking about that I created, or not really created, but rigged. And then after that, I created an animation blueprint, which, like the player character blueprint and game mode blueprint, it's a way of basically programming your animations. And once I created the blueprint, I went in and created a state machine within the nodes of the blueprint, which a state machine allows you to switch between modes. I have a blend space mode for idle and walking that will control the animation for the direction I'm going, as well as my idle animation. And then from there, I have a loop going from that for jumping that will basically go through and detect if the player's off the ground and play the animation, switch animations in between for each part of the jump, and then in the animation once the character hits the ground again. Once I did that, I had to go into the event graph of the animation to check if the pawn is valid, detect the velocity of the pawn and the direction, and if it was falling, and then that's how I was able to fully program the jump states and transitions. And finally, after all of that, I ended up playtesting it, making sure that it felt right. The default values seemed to be fine. Just for testing purposes, everything seemed to work flawlessly. So in the end, I ended up packaging the product, or the project, sorry, and ended up being able to have that completed. Overall, I would say that the experience that I went through, it was a solid experience and gave me a lot of knowledge into rigging a character and being able to start learning how to use Blender. But I feel like I could have accomplished more with better time management and better personal skills. I used to be super artistic with drawing as a kid, but I didn't really continue that into my upper years. And now I'm dealing with the consequences of not keeping up with drawing. Overall, I would say if I could improve anything about myself at this point, it would be my ability to sketch and draw pretty well. My drawing abilities are a little more than being able to make a stick figure and make it look good. The project itself took longer than expected because of an unfortunate bug I encountered while still in the Blender phase towards the finale of this project, when it was supposed to originally come out. I had spent all week trying to work on rigging my character and nothing was working. And I had to, just sit down and stop. I think I let it sit for a day or two. And once I picked it back up, at this point I figured out the x-axis thing, and very well that could have been the saving grace of my project, being able to get that done. Everything else seemed to work flawlessly up beyond that point, and I was able to complete the project as far as I wanted to get it complete relatively easily, relatively quick. I would say that I could use I could definitely use my skills that I've developed in this for future projects as well, and we'll carry this forward beyond what I have done today for this specific project. That is all I have to say. I've been going on long enough about this. It's been almost 20 minutes. So thank you, and I hope you like the result of the project. You might be seeing a clip right now of the game actually playing, or it's really not a game, but you'll probably be seeing a clip right now of the actual character walking around and jumping. Thank you and have a great day.